What are you doing here? Ah! 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 Ah!
D, or D the Game, is a video game that I've long wondered about from a distance. Growing up, I didn't have a 3DO, I didn't have a Sega Saturn, I did have a PS1, though to be honest I was more entranced by RPGs and games like Resident Evil at the time. However, I did see the spooky, mysterious nature of it, and I knew that someday I'd get around to it, and that day has finally come. Originally released in Japan on the 3DO in April of 1995, later ported to the Sega Saturn, Sony PlayStation, and for the purpose of this review MS-DOS in North America 1996, we're playing in the modern day by the way of DOSBox through GOG. D is a horror-themed, FMV-laced first-person perspective adventure game developed by Warp and published by Acclaim, originally by Panasonic. The gist of the story is as follows. You assume the role of Laura Harris, who goes on an investigation to a hospital after learning that her father, a doctor, went on a mass murdering spree. Upon your arrival to the hospital, it immediately warps into a castle, which then you must explore, uncover the secrets, find your father, and get out in one piece. Divulging any more would kind of ruin the story and the twist, so it's better off experiencing for yourself. It's also kind of a short game, which leads into... One of the interesting parts of D is that for the most part, your main enemy is the clock. There's a 2-hour time limit with no save or pause function, so good luck! Interestingly enough, I thought that this game would be one of those Shadowgate type games where there's death lurking around every corner. I played the game blind and was able to complete it in 2 sessions somewhat easily. There were a few spots that I thought for sure I would die. For example, there's a section with a knight armor set and QTEs. I failed a bunch and really all it did was make me just try it over and over again. Some obvious hazard sections revolving around spikes I didn't really venture towards, but getting kind of the overall feel of the game, I would guess that the game wouldn't really allow me to progress further, or if something happened it would just have me try it again. It seems the only true enemy here is the clock and your ability to solve puzzles and navigate. I do know that the game ends when you run out of time, essentially giving you a game over. But I can't really confirm if you could die otherwise. From a graphic standpoint, I could admit that today, they're a bit rough. Back in the day though, this is pretty groundbreaking and immersive. CGI and FMV galore to help give a cinematic creepy feel, albeit somewhat sluggish. While traversing the castle, the graphics do help convey that feeling of dread, mystery, and I could even sense a tinge of cold dampness in my computer chair. But maybe it was just my humid basement. The controls are... Realistically, you have all the directional buttons on the keyboard, the I key for inventory, and the spacebar for actions. The controls themselves are quite responsive and clearly easy to remember, but the tricky part is understanding your positioning in the rooms. For example, you may think turning left will get you to that locked door or cabinet, but the reality is you need to take another step up before turning left. These are the type of things that you just learn as you go. And there was a somewhat out-of-place QTE event section. While I touched on it, spoilers, sorry. It took me a minute to get used to, as they are very sensitive and touchy, aka whatever you do, don't overpress or mash the buttons, and definitely don't be too early or you will fail and have to restart the QTE section. The sound of D is pretty bad, I can't lie. Everything sounds really compressed and cruddy. The sound levels are all over the place. 75+% of the game is basically silent, and then you'll have an extreme event occur that's louder than loud could be. I had a hell of a time getting a good setting on my OBS for my playthrough, and admittedly, the loud sections were just too loud to mix well with my voiceover. I wasn't a huge fan of the soundtrack, sound effects, etc. The voice acting wasn't god-awful, but it wasn't very good either. Overall, the sound just didn't present a very good package. The gameplay and difficulty of D was actually quite good. I had fun exploring, I had fun solving puzzles, and nothing was really that hard. I actually didn't need to look anything up, I just had to keep good notes, keep pushing on, and some minimal trial and error. For reference, I had 2 gaming sessions, the first was cut short by my job, but honestly I probably would have run out of time anyway. These are the types of puzzles and games that I enjoy. I don't want to be pulling out my hair every 10 minutes a la Dino Crisis. I felt like the unraveling of the game and story was very smooth, fun, and interesting. As I mentioned, I beat D in 2 sessions over the course of 1 day, but I kept my interest and I was constantly looking forward to my sessions after work. One negative that I will say is that there really isn't much in the way of replay value. There seems to be 2 endings, a good and bad, as well as the aforementioned time up ending or game over, and overall I wouldn't really say that it's worth you slogging through the game again just to see a minor change. In my playthrough I got the good ending, but if you want to see the bad ending I'm sure you could look it up on YouTube somewhere as well. In 2022, D isn't perhaps the best thing around. In short, it's clunky, it has poor audio, not much replay value, and being a CGI/FMV adventure game, there's not much in the way of fast twitch reflex challenge or anything like that. However, if you are a fan of horror, mystery, suspense, adventure, and you can kind of put yourself back into the mid-90s mindset with your expectations, then this rather short, interesting, and creepy romp will tickle your fancy. I can't advise tracking down the console versions of D as they are fairly expensive, but if you want a quick go of it, you can get it for pretty cheap on GOG or Steam. All things considered, I give D or D the game a 6.5 out of 10. It was an enjoyable experience for me. I got what I wanted, and I basically got what I was expecting. It's not perfect, it's technically limited, but I couldn't stop pushing forward and unraveling the mysteries at hand. It was quite the experience. If you've enjoyed this review, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing if you haven't already. I do my best to reply to all comments on all videos, and if you'd like to see my first ever full playthrough of D, check out the pinned comment or description below. Take care.